Namo Buddhaya, Namo Amitabha. Hello everyone. So today I feel like talking about the three vehicles in Buddhism. The vehicle of Śrāvakayāna, Pratyekabuddhayāna, and the vehicle of Bodhisattva, also known as the Buddha vehicle, the Buddhayāna. So yana means vehicle. So the three vehicles are discussed in the Lotus Sutra. For people who maybe just first encounter Buddhism, why may be quite perplexed or confused by why there are so many different schools of Buddhism. There is Mahayana, there's Theravada, and so many different lineages, right? Which one should follow, which one should practice, and also why the Buddha taught so much. For those who know about the Pali Canon and the Chinese Buddhist Canon, right, it's so immense. Right? For the Chinese Buddhist Canon, there are over 2,000 texts. Right? It's really, really huge. The Buddha's teachings are the most voluminous compared to any other religious text, right, from other religions. If we were to compare the Christian Bible like the size of the apple, and the Pali Canon, it's maybe like the size of the earth, and the Mahayana Chinese Buddhist Canon, it's like the size of the observable universe. So why did the Buddha teach so much? Why couldn't he just give us one method and one practice for all of us so there will be no confusion? But why didn't the Buddha do that? So in the Lotus Sutra, the Buddha told us about this really, really clearly. And remember, we talk about how Buddhism, in essence, is not really a religion. It's really not a religion. Rather, it's a path to help us to be awakened to the truth of life and the universe. So the Buddha's purpose here is actually to help us to be awakened, to realize our Buddha nature. The purpose of why the Buddha actually appeared in our world, it's really for this purpose, is to help us to understand that we all have the Buddha nature that's within all of us. We all have this ultimate potential to become a Buddha, to realize Buddhahood, to be completely awakened, to liberate from all sufferings in life, to realize the ultimate truth of life and the universe. So that's why the Buddha came here into our world. And in order to do this job, to carry out this mission, he needs to expound the Dharma, the teachings, in accordance to people's different capacities, levels of understandings, preferences, etc. Why is that? Because each of us is unique. There isn't really like a one method that fits all. It's like when we go to see doctors, the doctors will give us different medicines according to the kind of sickness we have. So the Buddha is like this great doctor who is really skillful at healing people, and we are like this sick people, sick patients. So when we go to the Buddha, we'll take different medicine from the Buddha according to the kind of illness we have. So it's a bit like that, and that's why the Buddha spoke so much. All the teachings by the Buddha are actually skillful means to help us awaken to the truth, awaken to the ultimate potential of who we are, that is to be a Buddha. All the well-honored ones, the Buddhas, have appeared in the world only for the sake of one great cause. All the well-honored ones, the Buddhas, have appeared in the world in order to enable living beings to open up enlightened perception of the Buddha and attain purity, to show the enlightened perception of the Buddhas to living beings, to enable living beings to awaken to the enlightened perception of the Buddhas, to enable living beings to enter upon the path to the enlightened perception of the Buddhas. Shariputra, this is what it means to say that all the Buddhas have appeared in the world for the sake of one great cause. The Buddha told Shariputra, all the Buddhas Tathagatas only teach the Bodhisattvas that all that they do is always for one purpose, to show the perception of the Buddhas to sentient beings, so that they may awaken to it. Shariputra, the Tathagatas use only the one Buddha vehicle to expound the Dharma to living beings. There is no other vehicles, not a second, not a third. Shariputra, this is the way it is with the teachings of all the Buddhas in all the worlds in the 10 directions. All the enlightened ones of the past, present, and future, in all the countless millions and billions of lands of the 10 directions where Buddhas are active, benefit living beings and bring them peace and joy. In doing this, they use countless expedient means, all kinds of causes and conditions, comparisons, metaphors, terminologies, in order to set forth the teachings for the sake of living beings. These teachings are all the one Buddha vehicle. Thus, do all living beings, hearing the teachings from the Buddhas, ultimately attain all wisdom. Shariputra, I too am acting like this. I know that living beings have all kinds of desires, that they have attachments deep in their minds. So according to their basic natures, I use all kinds of causes and conditions, comparisons, metaphors, and terminologies to explain the teachings to them through the power of skillful means. I do this so they can all attain to the one Buddha vehicle and achieve all wisdom. Shariputra, in all the worlds of the 10 directions, there is no second vehicle, no third vehicle. The enlightened ones appear in this evil world of 5 corruptions: the corruption of the error, the corruption of affliction, the corruption of living beings, the corruption of opinions, the corruption of life itself. The corruption of the error means a time of chaos, where defilement weighs heavily on living beings, when greed and lust form the roots of evil. This is why the Buddhas, with the power of expedient means, have taken the one Buddha vehicle and spoken as if it were divided into 3. Shariputra, if those who claim to be my disciples, whether they are arahants or Pratyekabuddhas, do not know that the Buddhas Tathagatas teach the Bodhisattva mission, then they are not my disciples, nor are they really arahants or Pratyekabuddhas. Moreover, if these monks and nuns who think they have obtained arahant and are in their last incarnation and are about to attain final nirvana are unwilling to seek ultimate perfect enlightenment, then you should know that these people are in the grip of arrogance. Why is this? Because it would be useless for a monk who has genuinely become an arahant not to believe in this teaching. The only exception would be if they lived in a time when there was no Buddha currently present in the world. After the Buddha entered parinirvana, how so? After the Buddha left the world, it is difficult to find people who uphold the sutras, read and recite them, and understand their meaning. If they encounter another Buddha, then they are sure to understand this teaching. Shariputra, you must wholeheartedly have faith in the words of the Buddha, accept them, and uphold them. There is nothing false in the words of the Buddha. There are no other teaching vehicles, only the one Buddha vehicle. Beings of Tao faculties take delight in the lesser teachings. They are attached to birth and death, and even if they are in the presence of countless enlightened beings, they do not travel the profound, wondrous path. They are afflicted by their myriad sufferings and thrown into confusion. So for them, the enlightened ones speak of nirvana. I devised this expedient means to enable them to enter upon the wisdom of the enlightened ones. I have never told you that you will achieve the Buddha path. The reason I had never told you this before was because the time for telling you had not yet arrived. The right time is now, and I have decided to explain the Mahayana path. I adapt to living beings as I set forth this multifaceted teaching. It's rooted in the Mahayana path, and so I'm preaching this sutra now. The children of Buddha, whose minds are pure, who are flexible and of sharp faculties, have traveled the profound and wondrous path with countless enlightened beings. It is for these children of Buddha that I preach this sutra of Mahayana. I predict that these people, in lifetimes to come, will consummate the Buddha path. All the enlightened ones came forth into the world in order to teach the wisdom of the Buddhas. All they did was for this one real purpose. Nothing else was true. They never intended that the lesser vehicle would bring salvation to living beings. The Mahayana path is where the Buddhas abide, and what they gain here, the adornments of the power of concentration and wisdom, is what they use to deliver living beings. Having realized the supreme path, the equal path of the Mahayana, if I use the lesser vehicle to teach even one person, this would be stinginess, and such a thing could never be. If people have faith and take refuge in the Buddhas, the Buddha will not deceive them. You should realize, Shariputra, that we have made a vow to enable all living beings to be as fearless as we Buddhas are. This vow that I made so long ago, I'm now fulfilling by teaching all living beings and enabling them to enter upon the Buddha path. So just know that all Buddha's teachings are actually way of convenience to help save sentient beings with different levels of capacities, understandings, and karma. So eventually, what the Buddha really wants is for us to realize the perfect Buddhahood, for us to also become Buddhas. Right? That's why the Buddha said the Buddha nature is within all beings. He didn't say the Aha nature is within all beings, the Pratyekabuddhayāna nature is within all beings. Right? All these vehicles are simply skillful means. All these are actually under the one umbrella, the one Buddha vehicle. Right? Just different aspect of the Buddha vehicle. But eventually, we all need to generate the unsurpassed bodhicitta to carry out the bodhisattva mission and to realize the perfect enlightenment. And in the Lotus Sutra, the Buddha used a number of parables to illustrate this idea further. So I highly recommend people to read about the Lotus Sutra, at least to understand these parables, so to know what exactly happened. So the first and also the most famous parable is the parable of a burning house. So a wealthy man owns many houses, and one of his main house was on fire one day. And in that house, there were a lot of his children. They were all playing in the house, unaware of the fire, unaware of the danger. So the wealthy man thought, how he could actually help his children to escape from the burning house, to escape from the suffering. So if he were to tell the children that the house was burning and to tell them come out, the children would not really understand. They would not maybe even believe it, as they were so drowned in their games, in the pleasures that they enjoyed in the house. So he thought of the skillful means to tell the children, hey kids, please come out the house now. I have these 3 carts here, the sheep cart, the deer cart, and the ox cart. If you come out from the house now, you can get them straight away. I'll give them to you. If you don't come out now, you might be sorry later. So the kids saw, our father actually provided us with so many wonderful toys. So let's go down now. And that's how eventually the kids came out from the burning house. And when the kids came out, the kids asked the father, please give us the toy that you promised. And the father, thinking that he is actually a wealthy man with immeasurable wealth, so he shouldn't give his children these low quality cards. And he said to the children, actually, you know what? I have even better toy to you. And he brought out this ox cart with like so many jewels on this cart, canopies, umbrellas, all these wonderful things, and also with retinues around the ox cart. So he said, here is this great 7-jeweled ox cart that I want to give you. Those are just like low quality cards. So don't take them, but instead I take this great ox cart that is full of jewels. This is my toy to you. So this is a parable that the Buddha used to illustrate the idea of the 3 vehicles as a way of convenience. In fact, the Buddha really wants us to all realize the perfect Buddhahood. There is actually really just one Buddha vehicle, the Buddhayāna. So the burning house is a metaphor for the 6 realms of reincarnation, the samsara, or sometimes called the 3 realms, the desire realm, the form realm, the formless realm, and how all the beings, the children, are like the sentient beings. All the sentient beings, like us, we are being trapped in the cycle of samsara, and we're constantly experiencing the suffering of birth, death, old age, sickness, not to get what you want, to be with people you dislike, and all the suffering of the 5 skandhas, of both the physical and the mental. So although we experience this kind of suffering, but we are also unaware sometimes of the danger in the 3 realms. So that's why the Buddha is like this wealthy father who really always think of us. Think of how he can best help us to escape from the suffering in this burning house. That's why he devised this skillful means in order to lure us out of this burning house, to tell us that he has the toys that we like. So all these 3 different toys, the sheep cart, the deer cart, the ox carts, are in accordance to the preferences of the kids in the burning house. So the sheep cart is the vehicle of Śrāvakayāna, those who have no intention to help others, but they're interested in self-salvation. They're interested in liberating themselves from all sufferings in life, but they're not really interested in helping others to do so. So this is the path of Śrāvakayāna. And the deer cart is equivalent to those who aspire for the path of Pratyekabuddhayāna. Pratyekabuddhayāna is someone who observes the 12 links of dependent origination and realize enlightenment by themselves. So a Pratyekabuddhayāna can be born when there is the Buddha's teaching, where the Buddha taught the 12 causal links, or they can be born without the time of the Buddha, how they just observe the law of nature, the dependent origination, and they understood it and attained enlightenment. And the ox cart, this great ox cart, is equivalent to the path of the Bodhisattva. Eventually, what the Buddha really wants is for us really to take the Bodhisattva path, to generate the unsurpassed bodhicitta, to help save all sentient beings, so one can eventually realize the perfect Buddhahood, the perfect enlightenment. The great ox cart with all kinds of treasures on it are equivalent to the Buddhakaya, the vehicle of the Buddha. The vehicle of the Buddha is also the vehicle of the Bodhisattva. For the Bodhisattvas, they aspire to realize the perfect enlightenment, the perfect Buddhahood. And another parable in the Lotus Sutra is the parable of a conjured city. So a group of travelers are set on a path to look for a lot of treasures, and they have a very intelligent guide. This guide knows that in order to reach the place where the treasures are, the road is very long and far, and it's also full of dangers and difficulties. And he knew that if he were to tell about this to the group of people, they would give up really easily because they're very weak. They're afraid of dangers. They get tired easily. So that's why the guide conjured a city about midway and told them to go in and rest. And once these people rest for a while, the guide thought it would be such a pity for them to give up their goal for pursuing the ultimate treasures. So the guide told them, hey, actually, this is not the end yet. We need to keep on walking. The treasure actually lies ahead. So we must get up and walk. Do not give up. So the path of Śrāvaka and Pratyekabuddha is like this conjured city, the transformed city that the Buddha manifested. The Buddha is this intelligent guy who used skillful means to teach people. For those who are afraid of this long, difficult road, they teach them the path of Śrāvaka, the path of Pratyekabuddha. This is merely for rest and recuperation. This is not the final destination yet. For those who attain at the stage of Arahant and Pratyekabuddha, they must still need to walk ahead, to walk the Bodhisattva path in order to realize the final Buddhahood. Another parable in the Lotus Sutra is that the Buddha Dharma is like the rain that rains equally on all sentient beings, on all the plants and the trees. But because of the different species of the plants and trees, so each of them, when they receive the rain, they grew up differently. In the Lotus Sutra, it even talks about the 5 vehicles, the vehicle of humans, the vehicle of heavenly realms. Why is that? Because sometimes people, they're not interested in exiting the cycle of reincarnation. Some people don't even believe reincarnation actually exists. They're like the children playing in the burning house, not knowing that the house is burning. They probably just thought, it would be good to be a human, or it would be good to ascend to the heaven. So for people of this types, these mentalities, the Buddha will teach about the 5 precepts. If you observe the 5 precepts in your next lifetime, you can also be born as a human. Or if you do the 5 precepts and the 10 good deeds, in your next lifetime, you can ascend to the heaven. So there are also the 5 vehicles as well sometimes. So for people who aspire to just stay in the human realm or to ascend to the heaven realm, they are like the little herbs. And for people who practice the path of Śrāvaka, they're like the middle herbs. And for people who practice the path of Pratyekabuddha, they're like the upper herbs. And for people who practice the path of Bodhisattva, when they're just like a little Bodhisattva, when they just newly generate the unsurpassed bodhicitta, but they don't have much capacity to help save sentient beings yet. They are like this little tree. And there are also people who they generate the unsurpassed bodhicitta. Not only that, they are equipped with full capacities to help save sentient beings, and they have already helped save countless sentient beings. So they're equivalent to those huge big trees. So the Buddha taught the Dharma equally, but in accordance of each sentient being's abilities, we receive differently. We receive in accordance to our own capacities, our level of understandings, and also what we can actually receive in the moment. So that's why the Buddha devised all these different vehicles, all these different teachings simply as a way of convenience to help people with different types of capacities, understandings, roots, and karma. So that's why the Buddha's teaching is so immense. There are also other parables that are discussed in the Lotus Sutra. For those who are interested in reading about it, I do go and check it out and see what the Lotus Sutra actually talk about. It's really, really interesting. The Lotus Sutra is also one of my favorite texts. So it's also worth for Pure Land practitioners to understand what actually happened in the Lotus Sutra. It's really actually one of the most important sutras in Mahayana Buddhism. If you want to realize Buddhahood, then you must understand the Lotus Sutra. So in Chinese Buddhism, there is a saying that the Lotus Sutra is actually the path to Buddhahood. If you want to understand the Buddhayāna, the one Buddha vehicle, it's also important for us to understand the Lotus Sutra. And the Lotus Sutra can also be a Pure Land Sutra, because in the Lotus Sutra it also mentioned about Amitabha Buddha and his land of ultimate bliss. It also talk about how in one of the past lives, Amitabha Buddha and Shakyamuni Buddha, they were actually brothers. Both of them were princes who all realized Buddhahood very long ago. So this we'll talk more about it in the future. The Buddha also told us in the Lotus Sutra, for those who believes, upholds and practice in accordance to the Lotus Sutra, one can also attain rebirth in Amitabha Buddha's Pure Land at the end of this life, if one aspires to. So have no doubt that the Lotus Sutra is indeed the genuine teachings by Shakyamuni Buddha. The Mahayana Sutras are indeed the real teachings by Shakyamuni Buddha. Only a perfectly enlightened being can speak of such words. And in the sutra, the Buddha also told us about the immeasurable merit for someone who just believing and recite a single verse from the Lotus Sutra, and also the serious karmic consequences for someone who not only does not believe in the sutra, but even mock or revile the people who upholds this sutra. So we must not have any doubt about the words of the Buddha, and we shall really give rise to faith to such teaching, to the unsurpassed Mahayana path. So I hope this helps. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Amitabha.